Welcome back to the deep dive. So today we are doing a bit of time travel. Well, sort of.
A little bit.
It is January 19th, 2026. We've been living with this, AI revolution for a few years now, and the dust is finally settling. But the big question is, where did it settle?
And what does the landscape actually look like now that the initial hype has cooled off?
Exactly.
It's the question of the year, really. And to answer it, we aren't looking at crystal balls or Twitter threads. We're looking at a pretty comprehensive report that dropped late last year.
Oh, right, the AI report APEC October 2025. This is from the Bay Area Council Economic Institute.
That's the one.
And to be honest, this thing reads less like a dry economic report and, I don't know, more like a diary of how Silicon Valley basically won the war.
I mean, yeah, it pulls together insights from forums with just the heavy hitters. You got Anthropic, Google, Salesforce, LinkedIn, government officials.
It really is the definitive State of the Union for AI.
It really is. And our mission for this deep dive is to figure out what this document tells us about our reality right now. Your job, your safety, the whole global economy.
And there's one insight in here about the workforce that I think just flips the entire narrative of the last 3 years completely on its head.
Oh, you mean the people skills paradigm?
That's the one. We've spent years panicking that robots will take our jobs, right? But this report suggests that as the tech gets better, the most valuable skill you can have isn't coding.
Not prompt engineering.
Nope, it's empathy. But before we get to the soft stuff, we have to talk hard numbers, because the geography of where this tech is coming from it's shocking.
It is staggering. I think for a while there was this popular idea that remote work and decentralization meant Silicon Valley was over.
Oh yeah, the death of San Francisco narrative. Everyone was moving to Austin or Miami.
This report just takes that narrative and shreds it. They call the San Francisco Bay Area ground zero. And they have the receipts. Get this. In 2024, Bay Area companies attracted 76% of all U.S. AI funding.
Wait, pause on that. 76%.
76.
So 3/4 of the entire country's investment capital went to one specific region.
To give you a sense of scale, that's about $67 billion. The next highest city was New York. They pulled in $5.8 billion.
So, it's not even close.
It's a landslide. The Bay Area raised 3.5 times more, but it just dominates the total pie.
That's wild. Why is it so concentrated, though? Is it just because the big names like OpenAI and Anthropic are there?
Well, that's part of it, but the report calls it an ecosystem effect. You have the entire stack in one 60-mile radius.
The whole stack.
Yeah, you've got the hardware, NVIDIA's down in Santa Clara making the chips. You've got the foundational models, OpenAI, Anthropic, xAI, building the brains. And then you have the application layer, Salesforce and Databricks, building the tools we actually use.
So it's a feedback loop. The hardware engineers go to dinner with the model builders who bump into the app developers.
Exactly. That proximity matters.
Yeah.
The report points out that Silicon Valley always thrives on these leaps. First it was semiconductors, then PCs, social media, the cloud. Now AI is the next one.
But there's a flip side to this concentration, right? One that the report highlights, and it's a bit concerning for the rest of the world.
It is. You're talking about the global disparity.
Yeah.
They cite a study from Anthropic about who's using their model, Claude, and it showed that AI usage is, well, it's highly concentrated in high-income regions. The top users per capita in Asia-Pacific are Singapore and Canada.
So if you're not in those high-income bubbles, you're not just missing out on cool gadgets. You're missing out on productivity boosts, scientific breakthroughs.
The economic acceleration. The report warns about a huge global economic divergence.
Right.
If the benefits of AI only happen in wealthy nations, the gap between the haves and the have-nots just gets wider, aggressively so.
A digital divide 2.0.
But much, much harder to cross.
Which brings us to the thing that's probably on everyone's mind. The have and have-not dynamic in our own careers. Let's talk about jobs. This report spends a huge section on the workforce, and they use LinkedIn data to really categorize what's happening.
And it's one of the most useful frameworks I've seen, actually. They break jobs into 3 buckets.
Yeah.
Insulated, disrupted, and augmented.
Okay, let's walk through those. Who's safe? Who's in that insulated bucket?
These are jobs with low exposure to generative AI. Mostly, this is physical work. So if you're a plumber, a nurse, an electrician, ChatGPT can't do your job.
Right, you're interacting with the physical world.
Exactly. Robots are still clumsy.
So what about disrupted? That sounds bad.
That's the danger zone. These are jobs that require very little human interaction and are highly repetitive. The report calls these roles highly vulnerable.
So like data entry, basic translation, generic marketing copy.
Anything without much strategic thought, yes, you are in that bucket.
And then there's augmented. I'm guessing this is where most knowledge workers sit.
Correct. You have high exposure to AI, meaning it can do parts of your job, but the AI is there to support you, not replace you. It makes you faster or better.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting and honestly a little scary if you have kids graduating college soon. The report has a specific stat they call the canary in the coal mine.
This is the data point that should worry policymakers.
Hmm.
The Stanford Digital Economy Lab, they looked at early career workers, ages 22 to 25, in those exposed fields.
Yeah.
They're seeing a 13% relative decline in employment for that demographic.
13%. That's a huge drop for entry-level jobs.
It is. And think about what that means. The tasks we used to give to juniors, summarize this, write a first draft, code this basic module, those are the training wheels. That's how you learned.
And now the AI does that in seconds.
Right. So companies are thinking, why pay a junior human to do what a senior with an AI can do basically for free?
But that creates a massive long-term problem, doesn't it? I mean, if you saw off the bottom rung of the ladder, how does anyone ever climb up to become a senior?
That's the broken rung crisis. The report suggests we're creating this barbell economy. You have stable, high-paid seniors at the top managing the AI, and you have lower-paid physical service workers at the bottom.
In the middle, the pack-up is getting hollowed out.
It is.
So if I'm 22 and listening to this, what do I do? Because the report does offer a lifeline here, and it's surprising.
It's the people skills pivot. This is the big plot twist. The report highlights data showing that as the technical barriers drop, the value of soft skills is just skyrocketing.
Oh my.
Since 2018, the importance of people skills in technical jobs has grown by 20%. For C-suite executives, it's up by 30%.
So in a world where everyone has a genius AI assistant, the person who wins is the one who can negotiate, empathize, and lead.
That's the logic. If the AI handles that how, writing the code, analyzing the data, the human has to handle the why and the who.
I like that distinction. An AI can write a contract, but it can't convince the other party to sign it during a tense dinner.
Right. Or smooth over a misunderstood email. Or navigate office politics to get a project approved. The report literally lists curiosity, conflict mitigation, and creativity as the ultimate job insurance.
It's so ironic, isn't it? We built these hyperlogical machines, so now our economic value depends on us being hyper-emotional, or at least socially intelligent.
It forces us to be more human. And we're seeing new roles pop up because of this. The number of companies with a head of AI position has tripled in 5 years.
Wow.
And AI literacy, just knowing how and when to use these tools ethically, that is the fastest growing skill on LinkedIn.
So the advice from this report seems to be learn the tools, but double down on your humanity.
That is the winning formula.
Okay, so that's the job market. But let's zoom out to society. One thing I loved about this report is that it didn't just stay abstract. It gave real-world examples of how this tech is actually being used in 2025, 2026.
Yeah, it's not just chatbots writing poetry anymore.
Not at all.
No, it is moved into infrastructure. The report highlights San Jose, for example. They're using AI to prioritize traffic signals for buses. They've cut travel times by 20%.
That's tangible. That's getting home to your kids 20 minutes earlier because a light turned green at the right time.
And it saves lives. I mean, there's an incredible example with firefighting in California. We all know how devastating the wildfires have been.
Of course.
They're now using AI combined with low Earth orbit satellites.
This was the 1 meter thing, right?
Yes, the system can pinpoint the origin of a fire in a remote area down to a 1 meter circumference.
Incredible.
It then correlates that with terrain data and fuel load. And it tells firefighters exactly where to go before the fire gets out of control. It moves them from reacting to a fire to precision striking it.
And in science, the productivity gains are just as real.
Oh, absolutely. They cite an MIT study where 1,000 materials scientists used AI tools. It increased their patent filings by 20%. They are discovering new materials for batteries and solar panels at a rate that it wasn't possible before.
And the government is trying to get on board with this. The report mentions that Anthropic and OpenAI are providing their models to federal agencies for just $1.
It's a smart move. They want to lower the barrier to entry so the public sector, which is, notoriously slow, can start catching up.
Which is great, but it brings us to the dark side. If the government has this and hospitals have this, so do the bad guys.
The report has a pretty heavy section on cybersecurity.
It does, and usually when we talk about cyber war, we feel kind of helpless. But this report argues that AI actually flips the board in favor of the good guys. They call it the defender's advantage.
Okay, let's unpack that. Because usually we say the attacker has the advantage, the hacker only has to be right once to get in, and the defender has to be right every single time. It's an exhausting losing battle. Historically, yes, that's been the rule. But AI changes the math because of speed and something called data fusion.
Data fusion. Sounds like sci-fi.
It just means looking at everything at once. A human security guard can only look at one screen at a time. But an AI defense system can look at the email server, the firewall log, employee badge swipes, and financial transactions, all at the same time.
So it connects the dots.
Instantly. It sees that Bob just badged into the office in London, but Bob's password was just used to access a server in Hong Kong. A human might take hours to correlate that. The AI does it in milliseconds and locks the account.
So the AI acts like a digital immune system.
That is a great analogy. It detects the pathogen and creates an antibody instantly. It detects and patches breaches faster than a human could even type the command.
That sounds optimistic. What's the catch?
The catch is the type of risk.
Oh.
The report talks about this dilemma for policymakers. The high-frequency stuff scams, spam, basic hacks. The AI is great at stopping that. But the low-probability, high-impact risks, those are still terrifying.
The catastrophic stuff.
Exactly. Terrorist groups using AI to design bioweapons or launch huge infrastructure attacks. And there's a vulnerability gap. Big tech has these digital immune systems. But a small rural hospital, a local water treatment plant, they are the have-nots of cybersecurity.
And if they get hit, real people get hurt.
Which is why the report suggests a digital emblem. Think of it like the Red Cross symbol, but for the digital world. An international agreement that says these servers are humanitarian, you attack them, it's a war crime.
A fascinating idea, trying to bring the Geneva Convention into cyberspace.
Right.
But that requires countries to agree, which brings us to governance. How are we actually regulating this? Because it feels like every region has a different rule book.
We can't talk about this without talking about the rules of the road. We are seeing a real philosophical split. The report draws a sharp line between the EU model and what they call the California model.
And since this is a Silicon Valley report, I'm guessing they have a preference.
They definitely do. It's a debate about what you regulate. The EU AI Act, and the report is pretty critical of this, focuses on the tool itself, on the specs of the model.
How big it is, how much compute it took.
Yeah, if it crosses a certain threshold, it gets regulated. It's like regulating a hammer because it weighs more than 5 pounds, regardless of whether you're building a house or breaking a window with it.
Right.
And they argue that stifles innovation. They advocate for the California approach, which is risk-based. They don't care how big the hammer is, they care if you swing it at someone.
So regulate the behavior, not the math.
Correct. And this aligns with Governor Newsom's veto of SB 1047 last year. That bill would have regulated the foundational models themselves.
The big hammers.
Exactly. Newsom vetoed it, arguing that we shouldn't punish the engineers building the tools, but we should heavily punish the bad actors, using them to do harm.
It sounds pragmatic, but it puts a lot of faith in being able to catch those bad actors.
It does. But the report argues it's the only way to keep the U.S. competitive. And they mention California is also pushing hard on education. They signed AB 2876, which integrates AI literacy into the K-12 curriculum.
That's smart. If kids are going to grow up in this world, they need to know how the machine thinks.
For sure.
But what about the international stage? Can we get the UN to agree?
The report is pretty skeptical about the UN or Geneva solving this anytime soon. Geopolitics are just too tense.
So what's the solution?
They suggest using technical standards, bodies instead. Groups like NIST and ISO, the engineers.
The engineers.
Yes. The argument is, since the diplomats can't agree, let the engineers agree on technical standards for safety. If everyone builds to the same safety standard, that becomes the law of the land by default.
That is a very specific, very Silicon Valley solution. Code the laws into the standards.
It's likely the only way to move fast enough.
So let's try to land this plane. We're here in January 2026. Silicon Valley is still the engine pulling away from everyone else. Jobs are changing, entry-level work is disappearing, which is a potential crisis, but people skills are the new gold standard.
Right.
And in the cyber war, the good guys might actually have a defensive advantage for the first time ever.
That sums it up. It's a world that is faster and more efficient, but also more demanding of us as individuals.
And that leads me to my final thought for you to think about. The report emphasizes that AI literacy is becoming mandatory for every role. But if AI handles the technical execution, the coding, the drafting, the data analysis, and humans are left to handle the empathy, the negotiation, the strategy,
Where are you going with this?
well, it makes me wonder if the definition of work is fundamentally shifting. For 100 years, work meant doing things, producing output. But in this new economy, does work just mean managing relationships? And are we ready for a world where our economic value is determined solely by how well we get along with other people?
That's a profound question. It shifts the burden from IQ to EQ. And honestly, that might be a much harder skill to teach than coding.
Something to chew on as you head back to your potentially augmented job. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the 2025 AI landscape.
Always a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.